Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. I'm Susie.
And I'm Michael, and we're excited you joined us for this adventure.
So today's very special guest is Chris Bystriansky. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Susie and Michael. It's great to be here. I'm just happy to share my stories and help out listeners any way I can.
Yeah, no, and we're super excited too. It's actually cool because like Daisy and Luke is who introduced us to you, and like they have just, whenever they introduce somebody to like be on our show, they have just been like super quality, amazing guests and people who like we learned so much from. So again, like thank you for being here, and thank you Daisy and Luke. Thank you so much again for being here, and we just can't wait for you to share everything with our listeners and our adventurous family.
Happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, Chris, would you mind, before we get started here, you mind telling our listeners a little bit about your background and like why you started investing in real estate?
Yeah, thank you very much. So my name is Chris Bystriansky, as Susie mentioned, and I've been investing in real estate for about 4 years. And prior to that, I was a longtime corporate employee. I was raised on the south side of Chicago in kind of humble beginnings. And I was always taught, look, you have to go to school, you have to go to college, you have to get that great job, you have to get a good retirement plan, and you have to buy a house. I'm sure a lot of people out there have heard those same things. So I did all that, and I did it to a great extent. I even got 2 advanced degrees, and I spent my time having these great jobs, or so I thought, major companies, major global companies I was working at. Very proud to be there, and I was climbing the corporate ladder. So I thought I was living the life that I was supposed to be living. I was just following the script that people around me gave me growing up. But the problem was that I was chained to my office, or worse, chained to my cubicle a lot of times. And I wasn't really living life on my terms. I didn't have the freedom. I didn't have any flexibility. I had a couple of weeks of vacation a year. But the problem was I was making decent money. So I didn't even know, I didn't even know I was being so negatively impacted. And over time, I was looking for a way out. And I was in the corporate world for about 15 years. I was looking for a way out. And I knew at some point I was going to try to get into real estate. I read books 15, 20 years ago, and I had this knowledge of, okay, I'm going to go invest in real estate, but I didn't have any capital back then. But then the problem was I got these great jobs and I was making money and I was getting the capital, but then I forgot about all these other things that I learned and read about in these great books. Some of the famous ones, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, What Have You, Think and Grow Rich, you name it. So I was just living this corporate lifestyle. And just, I was exhausted, and I didn't have the flexibility and the freedom that I wanted. Mm-hmm. So me and my wife were just working, and nothing was really happening. Not that much growth, but we're climbing the corporate ladders. And then we had kids, and everything changed. I didn't want to be at my desk anymore. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be spending time with my kids, and that was really the kick in the pants, so to speak, of hey, get out there and start developing a real estate portfolio. So that's what I did. I thought I was going to go into single family houses. I was looking at a couple different houses in my area as rentals, and I was going to buy 2 that year. And my plan was to buy 1 or 2 every year and just build up this portfolio. But before doing that, I was talking to a couple other folks who also had real estate portfolios. And they said, hey, look, that's going to eat up a lot of your time. If you have kids, this may not be the best for you. Why don't you look into bigger things that take up more desk time, but less personal time. So you don't have to go to the places. So I started looking at investing in apartments, in syndications. And when I looked at the time commitment, the capital commitment, and the results, the earnings and the profits, I just naturally gravitated towards investing in apartments. I went to a couple different meetups and met some great people. And I learned that you don't have to be chained to the corporate desk to make money and to try to live your dream life. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, the corporate world it turns out it wasn't for me, because everything I heard from these other folks, they were going on trips. They were spending a lot more time with their family. They were making great income. And more importantly, they weren't tied to the corporate job. And that was so appealing to me. So I got the education. I joined one of the mentor groups. I went to as many meetups as I could. I read as many books as I could, and I dove in. And I started investing in these real estate, these apartment syndications. And the first year I was involved, my goal was to get involved in 2, and I ended up getting in 6, and then just started growing the portfolio from there. And how I was able to get in that many was I started meeting so many people, and I developed relationships with people who were putting these deals together, that I trusted them. I knew they knew what they were talking about because it was reinforcing everything that I had read and learned in my training. So I felt comfortable going into transactions with these folks putting together these syndications. And I just grew the portfolio in Texas, in Florida, in Georgia. And it's just been great. I diversified with different states, different markets, and different folks, different general partners putting together these deals. And here we are. I mean, I've done one myself as a general partner, and I'm just growing my portfolio now.
No, and that's awesome. And thanks for sharing like a bunch of that. I do have a question. So like being in a pretty secure corporate role to then like jumping out into real estate might seem scary or risky. Have you been able to do other things that you didn't think you were able to do since you made the leap and saw that you could be successful?
Absolutely. Some of the things that were on my to-do list or bucket list, so to speak, is just spend a lot more time with my kids. And that has been absolutely wonderful. Last year, I did a couple Ironman triathlons, and I was able to train for those. So think about being chained to a desk for 40, 50, 60 hours a week, whether that's actually in an office or at home working after the kids go to sleep, or getting my work done in 20, 30 hours a week in things that I need to do for the real estate, and then being able to train for 10 or 20 hours a week. That has been absolutely life-changing.
I was just going to say, was an Ironman a goal before, or did it become a goal after?
It was a goal. I had it kind of deep down, but it's only been about 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
That's something that it was always, that's crazy. Who would do that? Why would you do that? It was always no, 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 no. And that was my mindset. It was just do the corporate gig and be safe. Don't take any risks. Be successful in what you're already successful in, and just live your life. And then it became a lifestyle of, you know what? I'm not going to say no anymore. I'm not going to have this automatic rejection response. I'm going to think about, maybe I don't want to do that, but if I did, how would I do that? And that really started with reading a lot of different books and getting into real estate, and just a mindset change of, okay, I don't want to get into real estate, but if I did, how would I do that? Okay, I don't want to do an Ironman, but if I did, how would I do that? And then there was another thing that happened with all my extra time. I had a concept for a book in my mind, and it was always no, I'll do it later. I'll do it later. I'm not going to do it now. I'm not going to do it now. And then it became the same thing. Well, if I wanted to do a book, how would I write the book? How would it happen? And it happened last year. I took about a year out of my life, and I wrote a book about how I transitioned out of the corporate world and into the investing world. And then more importantly, how I taught my daughter to think like an investor and an entrepreneur. See, I took my story and my education and my work experience, and I was an employee first. I was working toward being an employee by getting a great education. And then I was an employee, and then I was an investor. And that took a long time out of my life. I did not want my kids to go through that same path that I went through. I don't want them to follow my path. I want them to accelerate their path and basically just do the last 4 or 5 years that I've gone through. I want them to start there. I trained my daughter how to be an employee first, and then I transitioned her into how to be an investor and an entrepreneur. And the changes were amazing. She was 6 years old when we started, and she had no idea about making money, but she developed employee skills, which is what a lot of us get when we go to school.
Yeah.
We're taught how to do basic things and then how to show up to work and do our jobs. We're not really trained to think or to go beyond the job.
Right.
I took her from being an employee. She got paid to do certain jobs. And then I transitioned her into being an investor. And the change was absolutely amazing. And it turns out that the same hesitations, the same fears that I had when I transitioned from being an employee to being an investor, and I was scared to give my money away. I mean, $50,000 check is a big damn deal. I was scared, and I see people do this all the time. A lot of people, they can't get over writing that $50,000 check to go invest in apartments or in whatever other investment outside of their corporate job. So they stay there and they're scared. I was the same way. And it turns out my 6-year-old daughter was exactly the same way. She had worked for a long time to build up some money. And then I offered her the opportunity to buy something in the house and collect rent on it. She was terrified. She started crying.
Aww.
And then it took her a couple weeks after that to really come to terms with, hey, daddy keeps asking me to do this. Maybe I should finally do it. And she finally took that step from just earning money in a job to earning money through an investment. And then she took off, absolutely took off. And now I've created a monster. She wants to invest. And now she's 8 and she'll get into some real estate investment soon. It was just amazing to see her transition from not making any money to being an employee in the house and then transitioning to being an investor. Absolutely amazing. I wish somebody had taught me that 40 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Would you mind sharing with the listeners, what did she end up buying? Like one thing in the house that she ended up buying that she's renting out now?
The first thing she bought in our house was the toaster.
Okay.
She bought the toaster for $25 and then she earned $1 of rent per week. So she rented it back to the family and the family, me, my wife had to pay her $1 a week. So imagine she's making $2 a week in her jobs around the house. She had to save money for a long time doing her jobs and then use that capital to go and invest in something, to buy an asset and then rent it back to us. This is the exact same thing that happens when someone goes and invests in real estate or what have you, single family houses, commercial real estate, apartments, same thing.
Yeah.
And she didn't have to wait to do it till she was in her 40s. She did it when she was 6.
Yeah.
And now she understands it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, one of our friends, he does the similar thing with his children. One of his kids bought their microwave, and every time they use the microwave, they have to pay her like 10 cents or whatever to use the microwave. But she also has maintenance and then electricity bill she has to pay on the mic, and she has to clean it and things like that. So it's teaching her all kinds of things, which is really cool. But yeah, and there's so many other things I want to unpack. But since we're going down this hole right now, I want to talk about it. This whole concept of, and especially I think a lot of millennials and the next generation Z are like really afflicted by having, spending money right now, like that instant gratification. And so what you're talking about too is you want to save up your money and then buy something, right? Buy what you might think is an asset, like a car or something like that. When an asset doesn't depreciate in value, it shouldn't depreciate. You should be getting money back from an actual asset. And so it's this concept, like you just mentioned a little bit, it's hard for a lot of people to fathom, like, hey, take your money that you have, buy an asset that's going to be cash flowing. And then with that cash flow from that asset, then you buy the things you want to buy, or you live off of that, right? That's how you shape your mind into being an investor and then eventually unlock financial freedom down the road. And what was the biggest thing for you that helped you overcome that barrier, that obstacle that you had? I've got to write this $50,000 check. I have all these bills, or I have to, pay a mortgage or whatever. Well, deep down, hey, if you put out this $50,000, you're going to get double that, hopefully, maybe in a real estate syndication back over time. What was the biggest thing for you?
The biggest thing was wanting to spend more time with my kids and my family. And I was in the corporate world and I just wasn't able to do that. And I didn't like being told what to do and how to spend my time. I had my own thoughts. And then I started being around the right people. Previously, I was around the other people in the corporate world and we're all doing the same thing. And we were making, a pretty good living. So we were comfortable. I certainly was comfortable. I didn't really feel the need to make a change. But then I had the kids and it was like, wait a minute, I'm totally not doing this right. I want to spend more time with them. I want to have that kind of energy. After work, I'd go and pick her up from preschool and she'd be running around this ball of energy and I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from sitting in front of the computer doing the same old boring stuff, exhausted from the stresses of the corporate world. And she's like ready to play.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, how in the world do I get to be more like that? Mm-hmm. I started looking for meetups in my area and I started connecting with the right people. And those people were like my 6-year-old. They were excited all the time.
Yeah, isn't that the coolest part is that because we all, right, are comfortable in a bubble. I mean, like some of us aren't. But once we find out that like we can thrive in a different bubble, it's so very cool to be like, oh, this is not what it has to be. This is not what I have to do. And even if you don't or like or dislike your corporate job, right? Because a lot of people thrive in their corporate job and I'm very like happy for them. They get what they want. But like even adding on like real estate investing into your portfolio still enables you to be able to like be a part of that other bubble where you thrive and you are still super happy as well. It's not like it's active or nothing. You like it's the whole concept of just being able to find a place where you are you and you are the best you. And that's the greatest part about this all is that like once you find that area, it's amazing like how we can skyrocket or become 6-year-olds again. It's awesome.
Yeah. Susie, I could not agree with that more. Yeah. There's a lot of folks who enjoy doing what they do and in the corporate world or what have you. And I know a lot of those folks and they also invest in real estate and they're supplementing their income, which is great because what it does is it creates multiple streams of income. You have your corporate income and then you have your income from these real estate transactions and deals. But that's the key. Generate more than one stream of income, something that is just going to continue to grow net worth and income, cash flow, but then also something that can become bigger later on, right?
Yeah.
I used to think, and one of the reasons I went into the corporate world, I mean, these are big global companies, all right? And let's take one of them, for example. One of my first jobs after law school was at a company called Enron. I don't know if you remember Enron, but Enron was one of the fastest growing companies in the world. Good business model, a couple bad actors though. And what I thought was going to be a lifelong company or career for me turned out to vanish. I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I got a great education. I got a good corporate job. And then look what happened. When I saw a lot of people lose their entire life savings on that company. And regardless of what company it is, there's transitions. There's either transitions or people are not developing the way they should. I think a lot of folks suffer from living life well below their capabilities. And one of the problems with that is one of the reasons, the causes is that people get comfortable. We let go of our dreams. We let go of the things that we want to do because we've reached some level of success. Well, maybe it should be 2 or 3 levels of success, 2 or 3 levels higher. I was working, I worked for 8 years in the corporate world and then I went back to business school and then I went out and did some consulting. And one of the companies I was working with, they were about, this consulting company, they were about $100 million company. And I saw problems with operations everywhere. And every time I started to raise a question, hey, maybe this way would be better, they pat themselves on their back and say, oh, well, we're a $100 million company. We got it under control. And every time they said that, I'm like, yeah, but you should be a $200 million company.
Yeah.
We reach a level of success and then we fail to take it to the next level. And that's certainly what I did for a long time. And it took a wake-up call from my daughter with all her energy and my desire to spend more time with her to go and take it to the next level. So certainly people can do great in the corporate world or whatever job there is, but let's supplement and let's give ourselves the opportunity to really live life on our terms, whether that's more time, more money, more freedom, flexibility, what have you, the capability to give back more. Let's do it. Let's take the capabilities the opportunities that we have and use our capabilities and really excel.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to drive home one point as well that we've touched on a couple of different times. But I just want to make sure our listeners really hear this. Like a lot of people think that they need to trade their time for money. That's how you make more money. But you're making this money to do what with it? I want our listeners just out there thinking, okay, what are you making money to do, right? To live life, right? But then you keep working harder and harder and spend more time in your job working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, maybe 100, depending on, where your job is, 100 hours a week, trading time for money. But then, like you said, you can't enjoy life. You don't get to enjoy life if you're doing that. And then I believe, Susie and I are strong believers, like there's an epidemic in the United States right now where people are forced, or not forced, but coerced to work until they're 65 years old and then retire. And hopefully they saved enough money throughout their career to then enjoy life when they're 65 and they're not as spry and they're not as healthy as they were when they were 30 or 40 years old. And so it's so powerful to develop these other income streams, these passive income streams. And we're big believers and proponents of passive investing in real estate in order to achieve multiple income streams. So you can dial back the number of hours you're working, but dial back the amount of time you're spending trading your time for money. So you can start enjoying life now, not later.
Yeah, that certainly is the education system at work.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's what they have to do. And then the folks who want to do something different, think about different ways of making money. They need to get a specialized education outside of the standard education system. They're not going to learn how to be entrepreneurs from the standard education system.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of key skills that are simply ignored in the school systems. I don't know if that's the fault of the education system. I think they do the best they can, and they try to teach the very basics. And then it's up to the individuals or the families to really supplement that and to give kids a different idea of how to make money. And I think that's where you have generational wealth and it stays within the same families simply because they're getting that supplemental education that the general population is not. And it takes people jumping the track from a job world to the investing world later in life to really alter the course of their family.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people do that. So I think, the standard education has its place, but we have to supplement, whether that's in the family or whether it's in our community, or if people want to volunteer. And if kids or young adults want to volunteer and get that education, then it's freely out there. But one of the challenges is knowing it's out there and knowing what to ask and having the desire to learn that. I certainly didn't want to learn that. I was perfectly fine in the corporate world. Someone would have tugged me on the shirt and said, hey, you need to go learn that because that's where you're going to make 10 times, 100 times whatever you're doing in the corporate world over your lifetime. That would have caught my attention.
That's true. And I even think about, because I love libraries. So I don't know if it's like the smell of books or something, but when I initially walk in, and I don't want to say I've walked into hundreds because that's not true, maybe 10 just because of where I lived. And when you first walk in, the books that are on the front shelf, it's always the staff's favorites, but they're never business books, entrepreneurship books, any of that. So I even think, not that I'm blaming it on libraries, but if no one is talking to you about it and you're not seeing it in the wild, it's really hard. Because for me, the books I wanted to pick up, I was oh, I'll check out what these staff books are. Oh, I'll check out, a biography or an autobiography. And maybe it was just actually the autobiographies I was reading. But I was these people don't even talk about investing either. It's hey, here's my childhood. Here's what I did with my one career. But when we listen to music, Spotify, really a lot of the times, their biggest thing is music, and Apple, it's Apple Music and iTunes. It's I don't want to say they don't make it necessarily difficult to find, but they also don't put it on the top of the shelf being hey, go towards these better things first. But then also a lot of people have this bad taste in their mouth for self-help. And I wish it wasn't self-help anymore. I wish it was just self-development, because we are constantly having to learn and grow. We're literally a different person than we were 5 seconds ago. And that's because we're growing. And so I wish that concept also left, because I think that even then, maybe people would start talking about these self-development books more or better. Because we even had a friend here last week and she was I don't really like self-help books. I'm whoa. You got to look at these differently, because one line in the book changes my life, right? It has me thinking completely differently. I'm not going into it thinking what is wrong with me? I'm going into it thinking, how can I be better? And when you go in with a positive attitude, everything changes.
Yep, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up that point, whether it's self-help, whatever it's called. I talk about this in my book, in that we as people, we go through different stages in life, and there are different growth stages. You think about it, we spend however many years at home with our families when we're young. And then we go to preschool and elementary school for a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we go to junior high or high school. And these are different stages in life. They're clearly laid out for us. Sometimes we even change buildings with a different group of kids. So it's a different stage. And then we go to high school, and then some people go to college, and that's a completely different stage. Or some people go into the workforce, and that's a completely different stage than education. And then they work for a couple of years, and what happens? The stages seem to stop. The different stages of life seem to stop. We continue in our job world, and there's no more development. For some reason, Whereas growing up, look, every 3 to 4 years, we're doing something different. We're in different stages in life. And then you start working and stuff changes. We don't grow anymore, which is an absolute shame. There might be different jobs or different skills learned on the job, but that's still the same stage of life. It's time. I think we all should continue with a different stage, whether that's having a job and adding these other streams of income, whether it's something completely different to earn the income, that's a different stage. So over time, our life it's new stage, and then same long stage until we retire. And we got to shorten that final stage that people seem to get stuck in. For me, it was 15 years. I wish it would have been 4, but it took me 15 years to start getting that specialized education and go and do something different or supplemental to what I was already doing. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because we grow, and then it just kind of levels off.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris, this has been a lovely podcast. I want to hammer home one more point before we move into the Adventurous 4 questions at the end. But I want to dial it back with something you said at the very beginning. And I wanted to loop back earlier, but I want the listeners to hear this because you said something, and I want to make sure we key on this as well, is that you said you diversify your portfolio across real estate. So a lot of people are like, oh, we need to diversify, have stocks, bonds, real estate, whatever, REITs, whatever you want to say. Like what you said, diversify across real estate, which is cool. And the way you mentioned it was various different markets that you're invested in and various different operators as well. You want to elaborate a little bit more on that, why you decided to diversify there or what?
Yes. And I use the term diversification, even though I'm in the same class of real estate, I invest in apartments. Okay. It's the same class, but I've diversified across different geographic regions because of migration patterns and they're good markets.
Yeah.
So for example, I have investments in, or had investments in Atlanta, Orlando, Jacksonville, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, Houston. And that's what I mean about one of the things I mean about diversification. Yeah. They're different areas of the country, good areas. I'm not going to go invest in something that in an area that is not growing, that does not have a positive increase in population or job growth. I like to invest in areas in good demographics, increasing jobs, increasing population, increasing household income. Those are good markets for me. So I like to diversify across those just because I like to see the different markets as well. And then the different operators. So I have relationships with a lot of different general partners who put together these syndications. Mm-hmm. Some of the folks I would not invest with. Some of the folks I will invest with every chance I get because they're good operators. And getting out there and going to events is a way to meet all these different general partners. So I diversify in geographically and in my team of general partners that I would invest with.
I love it.
Same asset class though, because of the demand drivers for apartments.
Absolutely. We're very big proponents of multifamily because everybody always needs a place to live, right? But we can that's a whole nother podcast.
We could talk all day on that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Chris. Let's move into the Adventurous 4. These are 4 exploratory questions we ask all of our guests. So the first question we have for you, Chris, is where is one place you wish to travel to and why?
Okay. Yeah. So one place I would wish I would travel to, and this has to do more with regret. Okay. I regret not making the decision to go earlier, would be Fiji.
Oh.
So my wife and I used to travel a lot. We waited until later in life to have kids. So we traveled around the world. One of the places that always came up to go to was Fiji. And we decided not to go because we would have to take a plane to Hawaii and then another long flight. And every time we came up to this decision, we would say, why are we going to Fiji when we're already on Hawaii? Let's just stay in Hawaii. We've been to Hawaii many times and we never made that jump to go to Fiji. Well, now we have little kids and we're not going to Fiji anytime soon. So it has to do, that location has to do with the regret I have of not making that decision to go when I had the opportunity. And that is the same decision that I make over and over and over again now when I have the opportunity to go and do something. So I try not to make a decision that is going to leave me with regrets later because I missed out on something.
Love it.
So if I have an opportunity to go and do something exciting, I want to go do it if there's any way possible. So I wish I could have avoided the regret by going to Fiji.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So now the second question is, what is the number one thing on your bucket list and how are you leveraging real estate investing to achieve it? And I think I know.
Yep. I crossed something off on my list last year. I did 2 Ironmans. And the reason I was able to do that was because investing in real estate gave me the freedom and the financial wherewithal to train and get the equipment and to spend time going to the events. It's off my bucket list now. I already did it. But thanks to real estate, I was able to do that.
What were the 2 locations?
I did the one in Texas in Woodlands in October and the one in Arizona in November. So they were 6 weeks apart. Wow. I didn't plan it that way. COVID rearranged the Ironman schedule for everybody. And that's just when they fell.
Yeah. And one of our friends actually ran the one in Texas. So yeah. One of our partners actually. Yeah. So anyways.
Yeah. It's something that has been on my bucket list for a couple of years. I used to think it was insane. And I mentioned before, I had that mindset of, instead of thinking of, no, I'm not going to do that, that's crazy. It became a mindset of, well, if I wanted to do that, how would I do that? And that goes for everything I look at now, whether that's going on a trip, investing in something, a different adventure. So anything.
Very cool. No, I like it.
So the third question we have for you, Chris, is what is one piece of advice for someone who wants to start passively investing in real estate?
Yes, do it. That would be my one piece of advice. I obviously get the education first and surround yourself with other successful investors. That's absolutely key. They will guide you. The folks in real estate seem to be incredibly friendly. And I have reached out to so many people for help, and I try to give back and help as many people as I can. So my advice would be to reach out to other successful real estate investors, learn and get going, because it's a pretty good investment and values go up and everyone needs a place to live.
That's right.
Yeah. And there are no dumb questions, right? Like everyone in this space is so willing to help that when you ask a question, you will get multiple answers. You won't get like one brushed off answer. You will get a ton of very valuable answers. So please, please, please ask questions.
Yep.
But then the fourth and final question is, if you had unlimited resources available to you, how would you leave an impact?
Well, one of the things that I wish would have happened for me was a long time ago. I wish there would have been some type of alternative investing or alternative ways of making money courses that I had access to growing up. Again, I was taught to go to school and get the education and go get a job. And it turned out that was the farthest thing from the truth. That was not very good advice. So I would try to give everybody the opportunity, whether that's through some free training or marketing it to the world. Hey, look, there's other ways to make money besides the job. Mm-hmm. Just explore it a little bit. Maybe it's not for you, but at least explore it. It's not the job. I never went to a career fair and there was people telling me to invest in real estate or stocks or cryptocurrency or whatever. There was none of that. It was this employer or that employer or that employer. And that was it. There was nothing else. So I would, with my unlimited resources, I would give everybody the opportunity to learn about different ways to make money.
Love it.
I do too. Thank you for that, because that's huge.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. So before we end the show, would you mind sharing with our listeners, the Adventurous family, how they can learn more about you, and you can share how they can find that book as well that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah. So if you want to reach out, you can go to one of my websites. It's rentingfrommysixyearold.com. And that's also the name of the book, Renting from My 6-Year-Old. rentingfrommysixyearold.com.
I love it.
Love it. Cool. We'll make sure we have that in the show notes as well. And thank you so much for joining us today, Chris. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. There's so many great nuggets in there for our listeners as well. Anything to add, Susie?
No, just thank you. It's been a pleasure. And we are so happy that we got to know you a little bit better.
Yeah. Susie and Michael, thank you so much. I've enjoyed it. Hopefully I shared some good information with the listeners and they could either take that first step to living the life of their dreams and creating multiple streams of income, or accelerating that and taking it further to a further stage. So thank you very much for even having this podcast and also for having me on. And thank you for doing what you're doing. You're making a huge impact in the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Until next time, explore more. Adventure awaits.
Woo!